Well, like around here.
Patriot side on the left.
But you do know the mayor's. Occasionally.
Yes.
Oh, you lost any weight? Somebody's asking.
55 pounds on there.
Wow, 55 pounds. Congratulations, man.
I think almost 4 months.
Wow, that's
Quick.
cool.
I mean,
What's the secret?
No carbs, no sugar.
No carbs, no sugar.
I did this about 2 years ago. I lost 70. I was almost 300.
Wow.
2.5 years ago.
Wow,
And
congratulations.
then I got married and gained like.
See what you women do there?
Oh, yeah, I know. Only some of us know.
Oh yeah, only some.
Yeah.
Some couldn't cook.
pretty good setup.
After I had my open heart surgery, I was down to about 180, 185 from like 220. My wife started feeding, and I was up 250 pounds last year. My doctor said, stop, you gotta quit. So I quit. Now I'm down to about 225.
I was 265. And I'm down to 210. And about 3.5 months.
I'm gonna be down. I want to lose about 10, maybe 15 more
When I
pounds.
was down there, well, it had a little washer on the bottom of it.
Rubber O-ring.
Reddish metal.
Oh, yeah.
Like got power cord for a 5
But see, I didn't get to tell me how much power I had on my phone.
Oh, you don't know?
I don't know. So I have 2 battery packs. And I think
You get anything on him. Oh, I know. Yeah, there you go. Hey. Are you? You use my card. You be my cameraman.
There you go.
I'm right.
Hey, Brandon.
How you doing?
Yeah, but no, he is. Why? He's the circle. He's one of the circle 7. You know.
Ever a snake.
Yeah, it's got a few people.
I couldn't wait anymore, Brandon. That's
Oh, it's all right. I know we could cut it close.
I left the house at 20 minutes. I got to go down there, really. I'll be standing out there. Get down here and I'll look. And, oh, man.
That's what we just flash it out. That's even better. Hey, when they make it, do something, they make it worse.
Yeah, it was. I totally agree with that.
He should have explained himself a lot better.
Yeah, he should have. Yeah. Hey, how you doing?
We go the way around, we don't have any, they got it all.
No problem. You know you're a good man. You got a dog. Girl, you're good. You are that prince. Sorry.
That's what you need.
Yeah, a lot of commercial, hotels, clubs, and stuff. I think a lot of their residential apartments in there. A lot of multi-families.
Somebody asked what this was for. It's government accountability.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, quite a bit.
You can't count on the local newspaper to report the facts.
I was thinking exactly what all we know. Yes, sir, I won't believe it.
Check the AC bathroom for me, Eric. If it's on 63 is good.
I was. You ain't that big. I know. You see about 9 foot. I know.
That'll make it nice. Big pair of boots. That's what we do.
Hey, Rose. Side 11, just bring them by my house.
It shouldn't be too bad tonight, because the sun's not out. It's just not that hot. But when it's 100 degrees, the sun's it gets hot in here.
Just whatever you can go buy reviews, so there's variety of them.
That's true. That's true. You're right. Yeah.
Yes, Javi. All the more reason.
Really? He looks well, that's a bit of a drive. We start now.
Thank you.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to have Pastor Jake Rogan come up here and lead us in the invocation, please.
Pastor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pray.
Father in heaven, we want to acknowledge that you are the sovereign creator of all things. You made everything, and you made mineral wells, and you sustain mineral wells, and we recognize that. We also want to acknowledge that it's a gift to live here. We're so thankful to be able to live in a city, in a community as fantastic as this one, Lord, so we want to say thank you for that. And we also want to ask that you would continue to pour out your grace on our city, and that this evening you would give wisdom to each of our council members, our mayor, our citizens, everyone as we debate and decide on these various items of business. I pray that you would give wisdom to know what to decide. And Lord, I pray that you would give more than just wisdom, that you would give creativity. We have so many issues, threats, opportunities that require creative solutions. And I pray that you would provide those creative solutions. I pray as well that you would, through this meeting tonight, bring justice. That you would bring justice for those who don't have a voice, people who aren't here tonight, for our children, for our grandchildren, for our elderly, for our infirm, those people who can't come and speak for or against a motion or give a report. I pray that tonight would forward justice for them, that you would give us as a community peace, and that you would cultivate a sense of neighborliness and mutual care and concern through this meeting tonight. Lord, we're asking essentially that you would make Mineral Wells, in its imperfect way, a reflection of that great city that will be in the future for those that you've made who are in Christ. And Lord, I'm praying this in the name of Jesus with all who call upon that name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to you, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, so I know I need to talk into this microphone because I did a poor job last time. Happy belated Father's Day to everyone out there. We're going to start out with Doyle Light. Councilman Doyle Light, could you start us off on the citizens' comments, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members, citizens, it's no secret that public safety is a personal concern of mine and a desire of my heart. And so I signed to speak during the public comment of our meeting tonight to bring attention to something that's very near and dear to my heart. And so Mr. Mayor and council members, citizens of Mineral Wells, I want to recognize Chief Poole, Assistant Chief Dunn, and the members of the Mineral Wells Fire Department for their service above and beyond to our friends and neighbors at the City of Weatherford. Most are aware, some of you may not be, that the City of Weatherford firefighter Andy Lawler lost his life in the line of duty while on a TIPNIS deployment in West Texas. Members of the Mineral Wells Fire Department stepped up, have been assisting the City of Weatherford, covering their station assignments and whatever other assistance was requested from Chief Russ, allowing their department members the opportunity to mourn and to attend the funeral of their comrade. So Chief Poole, on behalf of myself personally and the City of Mineral Wells, thank you for representing the City of Mineral Wells with excellence, and I appreciate you greatly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Light. Carol Wright, and I'm going to ask everyone during this meeting, if you would, if you'll come up and speak at the podium, if you'll state your address and name, that would be really helpful. So if Carol Wright could come up next, I would really appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, my name is Carol Wright. I live at 1412 Southeast 3rd Street in Mineral Wells. I'm here to talk about the city ordinance that allows smoking in public. The City of Mineral Wells enacted a non-smoking ordinance in 1970. So that makes that ordinance about 48 years old. The ordinance does not address the health issues of secondhand smoke. And of course it says nothing about the Surgeon General reports, because I don't think there were any 48 years ago. 1970, maybe there was. But this ordinance states that it is an offense to smoke in any enclosed indoor public place. But it also says that if the owner of this public place chooses to have a smoking area in their business, they may do so. All they have to do is just designate an area for smoking. And the same air conditioner that services the non-smokers services the smokers. So it's kind of like a mesquite pit where you have a big room, you have smoking over here and non-smoking over there, but the air conditioner is servicing both. So it's stirring up the smoke and you are breathing secondhand smoke in there whether you know it or not. This ordinance also says that if an owner says that he would like to make his place completely smoking, he may do so, similar to the bingo halls in gaming. All he has to do is put up signs that say smoking here, and we have a couple areas where you cannot smoke, which is like a cashier's area or a service line. There are exceptions in this ordinance, and they are, of course, a business that has 50% of their gross sales from alcohol, a separate bar in a restaurant, and a tobacco specialty shop. In 2014, the City of Weatherford made their complete city 100% non-smoking. And so tonight I respectfully ask the City Council to update this 48-year-old ordinance and have it to address the health issues of secondhand smoke. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this information, Mrs. Wright. Robert Arentz? Did I get that
Avance.
correct?
Avance.
Avance, okay, sorry.
My name is Robert Avance. I live at 201 Northeast 27th Street, Mineral Wells. I sat and wrote this down. I was going to read from it. You can see my little scrabble in there, but I just want to say this. I'll wing it. This city council needs to get behind this mayor, because until you do, there's nothing going to be accomplished. You're just going to be wagging in his tracks. That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing. And it's, and there's three things that need to go, or two things for sure. Industrial Foundation, Mr. Houghton. That's two things. Why do I say the Industrial Foundation? Because I had the extreme displeasure of working for one of the companies that the Industrial Foundation brought into Mineral Wells. Mark Rose and MXROS. Not on the base. Anyway, there was never any, I would say, human, or it was subpar, very subpar working conditions. The lighting was poor. They had many times they were told about putting the lights. Because I was there when the code people came out there. You've got to do this. OSHA came out there, and nothing was ever done. We used to have the fire marshal come on a regular basis. They would make us sweep up our areas and roll all of our extension cords up and stuff and stand there till the fire inspection. And then sooner, it wasn't very long time, the fire inspections quit. Nobody came around. OSHA didn't come around. Fire didn't come around. You could just barely make a living. And we were told by Mark Rose and Mr. Henry Cox that they had done an extensive study in Mineral Wells and that they were at the top of the average pay grade in Mineral Wells at $9.25 an hour. Those are the kind of businesses that they bring in here. Mex Ross is no longer in business. He sold the building to Henry Cox and Venomatic. So they're not doing anything. They're wasting our money. And it's time that y'all started working for the people, because y'all don't work for Lance Howerton. Y'all work for the voters of Mineral Wells, Texas. And if you don't start working for us, you won't be sitting up there next year, the next time you run. I promise you. Because as Sam Cooke said, a change is going to come. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Busher, would you like to come up and speak?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, council people. My name is Steve Butcher. I live at 702 Northwest 7th Avenue, Mineral Wells. I would like to respectfully make a request. I would like to have this gentleman and any number of others get together with our mayor and make a list of the problems, the questions, the concerns, the assertions, the assumptions, the stories they've heard on the street. If you would give me a list to work with and give me a week to 10 days, I will come back here if this is where you want to do it, or wherever you want, and I will provide you answers. I'll provide as much documentation as is reasonable, and I'll bring people to support in those cases that I can. But I'm not real pleased with the ambush method of discussing items, so if you could do that, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I say something?
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Butcher. No, actually, let me finish.
Okay.
Have some other people on the cards, please. Darlene Kennedy.
My name is Darlene Kennedy. I live at 805 Southwest 25th Street, Mineral Wells, Texas. I'd like to speak in behalf of the certificate of occupancy. Whenever you have your water turned on, you have to meet across these inspections and everything. I myself, as a property owner, I have rental properties, think it is the best thing that Mineral Wells has had to offer, because it is the only thing. I was born and raised here in Mineral Wells, and then I lived away for a while, and I came back. And then we decided this is the town we want to make our home in. But whenever, 14 years ago, when we started the rental property business, you know, we put every house we have up to code, because that was the right thing to do, and because that was, you know, any of the inspection department now can tell you that we run a tight ship and all of our houses are up to code. But at that point in time, we started looking around us and just seeing in various places where they're just out and out slums. And, you know, a few months or a couple of years back, were trying to get up this deal to where people would have to do this, bring it up to code, meet HUD codes. And oh my goodness, there were so many, and most especially rental property owners. In those meetings, I spoke at that meeting, and now I choose to speak again. I definitely think that you, Mr. Shoemaker, and you, Mr. Perricone, definitely, I mean, it's a total conflict of interest for you to be able to vote on that, because it is not right. So many of the places, well, I know because I was in the meetings, I was at every one, and then finally a certain gentleman, we don't have to call his name, come in and sit down and scribble on papers, and I turned to my husband at that point and I said, there won't be any more of these meetings, and there wasn't. I mean, that was the old, what I want to say, unwritten rules where certain people run the town. That was it. But to me, this is the way the city come back around in order to override that. Yeah, it's an inconvenience for us to have to go through these inspections and everything, but if you get rid of these inspections for rental properties, now I don't know about family dwellings, but if you get rid of this, you leave no boundary for people to have to meet. The people will be put back into the low slums because there's nobody inspecting and making anything be brought up to par. And I firmly, from the bottom of my heart, believe that this is one way for our city to step up and make a better place for all of us to be. You know, there is, way over half of Mineral Wells, I believe, is rental properties now. And if there's one rule, you know, this was something I had a problem with when we started doing our homes. If there was a rule that we follow, I want to follow it. But when my neighbor doesn't have to and good old boy down here doesn't have to, that's not right. There should be one rule for us all, and it is to benefit the people of Mineral Wells, not just to make a killing off of those who have less education and don't know how to do anything better. But anyway, that's all I have to say, and I want to appreciate y'all's consideration on this matter.
Thank you very much. Did you have anything else you want to say, Robert? You want
Yes,
to come
sir.
back up here, please?
Yes, sir.
And if you could keep this to 1 minute, I'd be
Yes, sir.
appreciative.
Not a problem. I'll address Mr. Butcher here. You used to frequent that shop because you drove your Dodge Magnum into
Robert,
the lower part of
Robert,
the shop.
I need you to address us
Okay,
first.
okay.
Thank you.
But anyway, Mr. Butcher used to frequent the shop. And he and, I don't know, him and Mark had some car things going upstairs. But he parked right in our work area, or real close to it. So he, you know, he saw firsthand. He knew what was wrong here. And instead of trying to get Mark to upgrade them, you know, I don't know what happened. But there was never any significant upgrades done to that business. at all. Nothing that was ever, we had to put in a cable line upstairs because we were working on some data vans, and OSHA says if you're off the ground, you gotta have a harness on. We didn't have no harnesses. We had the safety line because they made us put it in. But it was never used. It was never enforced, you know? And so, you know, if that's the kind of businesses that's gonna be coming to mineral wells, we don't need them. We really don't need them. Thank you again, Mr. Mayor.
Let's move on to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Next on the agenda is a presentation from Pulse Ministries. Rose, are you presenting that?
It's on.
So for those, sorry, it's a little bit different. So for those of you that don't know, Pulse Ministries, most people either know us as Prairie Mineral Wells or Mission Mineral Wells. Pulse Ministries is our 501c3 legal name. So we're just going to share about the Mission Mineral Wells Summer Mission Project that we had, not last week, but the week before. And so we just kind of wanted to let you see that. The first thing I have is just a super quick, it's like 30 seconds, just kind of an overview that Caleb Crouch from First Baptist did. It's just kind of gives you a glimpse at all of it. So for those of you that don't know, Mission Mineral Wells, the summer part of it is where we are partnered. Mission Mineral Wells in general, from the very beginning, has been partnered with Chief Sullivan's Project 365. When we first came into Mineral Wells as Pulse Ministries, and we had a vision for how to serve the community, it was especially because we had been hearing from several people, you know, we used to have lots of mission teams come in, but nobody knew what to do with them, so they quit coming. Well, that didn't sit well with us. There's too much work to do to be turning around people who want to come help. And so we brought this idea, and it actually looked totally different from this, and the housing wasn't even a part of it. But we brought the vision and the idea, and we sat with Lance, and we said, this is what we're thinking. You know, does this sound like, how does this sound? Does this sound like something that we can do? And is there any way for us to partner with the city? And early on, right from that meeting, Lance said, well, you know, our new police chief has this Project 365 plan, and it sounds like you might be a good fit. And so right from the beginning, he connected us. So as soon as Project 365 was on the ground, we were on the ground with our part. And originally that was what, if you know us, if you've been kind of hanging out with Mission Mineral Wells for long, it's our spring mission, 4 weeks outreach in the streets, in whatever zone the city has picked or the police department has picked. It's 4 weeks in the streets of outreach with them that ends with a big Easter celebration. So we have been partnered, and it's been a huge thing for us to be partnered with the police department, with the city, with the churches, and then with bringing in the housing projects as of last year. And it was really kind of taking over a part of originally Chief's Project 365. That phase 4 involves beautification and revitalization. And so Chief would put together with the city, put together packets of homes that had been identified and then submit them out to the community and let groups adopt a home. A church maybe or a business would adopt a home and they would go and run with it. Then for 2 years, the Bounce program came to town, and that's through the Texas Baptist Men's, and it's a youth organization where they go out, usually in disaster recovery situations, and they revitalize some homes that have been hit by disaster. They came through a connection with Nathan Buchanan, who is at First Baptist Church, and has been a part of that Bounce program in the past in other communities. And so through that connection, they came 3-4 years ago, and they don't go back to a city twice, but they asked if they could come back a second year. And we had already, after the first year, had started talking about, with us and the other churches involved, we had started talking about how can we continue this work here? Like, how can we get the community involved and the churches involved? How can we keep this program here, make it a native platform? And so between working with the Bounce the second year that they came and kind of learning from their model, as well as another group that I'm learning from in the Metroplex called Community Powered Revitalization through an organization called Six Stones, we've been for the last 2 years kind of building the infrastructure under making this a native program or a native platform. So this is our second year, and it's just a little bit of background because I know some of you maybe don't have maybe you don't know about us, so there's that. And so we, the Bounce program doesn't come back, and we have kind of taken over this part of the Project 365 program in that now we coordinate the whole community to come together, whether it's through donations or actually volunteering or in whatever format. We've lots of opportunities, but this gets the whole community on the same team working together to actually make a difference. And so that was just a quick overview, that little video of the 3 houses that we did, and you saw us where we met at the Church of God. That was sort of our base camp for the week, and so that's where we had our registration. So just, I know everybody likes to hear numbers and details, and so super quick, I'm going to run you through these, and then you feel free to ask questions, but I don't want to take up too much time. So we did this year 3 homes. Last year we did 4 homes plus a park. We actually had 5 or 6 homes submitted to us this year. 2 homeowners never contacted or responded in any way. 4 did, and then one of those we were set to work on her home, and somewhere along the line she stopped communicating. So we were slated to do 4, but we had actual approvals from 3 homeowners. And so the little picture there, if you saw any of the promotions that I did leading up to the project, got this just kind of a fun idea. In Mineral Wells, superheroes wear yellow. And so we just made a little cape, and a lot of the kids would take cape pictures that when they came and worked, and so just kind of a way of making it fun. We had 191 volunteers, at least, with some of the sign-ins getting moved from base camp registration to the homes. We think some of those, they kind of get lost a little bit in the shuffle, but 191 for sure registered volunteers. And that includes our pre-work days. So that's not just the 4 days that we were on the ground last week and a half ago, but it's also 2 prep days where we had full-size teams come out prior to the work, prior to the actual 4 days. So we had 191 volunteers and well over 2,300 volunteer hours for this project. The numbers in cash, we have cash donations. We are actually still getting those, and I don't have total numbers, but this is what I have so far. $17,675 in cash donations, grants and funds, over $3,000 in in-kind. So that could be Metro and Walmart donated Gatorade, or some places provided the meals, or the dumpster, the roll-off dumpster was donated. And so again, these are numbers. Last year when I gave the presentation, it was about a month out, so by then I had more solid numbers. These numbers are still coming in, so we expect to see those numbers go up some, but this, it gives you a general idea of kind of what it looked like for this year. Who's involved? And this for me is the big thing. We had at least 31, and again, in the hustle and bustle of recruiting donations and volunteers, some of those get lost. But we know of, and we were able to recall 31 entities. So that's school, several nonprofit clubs, 11 churches were involved in some way. Obviously, the City of Mineral Wells and the City Council. I actually had City Council on the ground with us. 13, yes, we love our doll. Yes, at least 13 businesses. 13 businesses that in 30 minutes yesterday, I could go down the list and we got together. I actually think there's probably some more, but, and then again, several individuals. And we had some just really cool things happen this year in that while we were on the ground working on the houses, aside from all just some amazing stories coming throughout the week, we had several people, and it was new, because they didn't do this last year, we had several people that would stop at the job sites and say, I'm so glad you're here, I'm so glad you're doing that, so-and-so really needs this, and how can we give? How can we? And so they took our business card, and that's part of the reason I say we're still getting them, because the checks from those people, they're still coming. Or some of them would just drop off cash to one of my team leaders. At the end of the day, team leaders are bringing me cash and saying, somebody just came and donated this. So that was really, really awesome. And then throughout the week, you know, I was posting pictures and posting live videos of kind of the progress, and even sharing some of the stories that were coming out. And through that, it was phenomenal how many people would comment, or they would private message me and they would say, I want to be a part of that, how can I help? You know, how can I sign up? What can we do to be a part of this? And so those 4 days ended. We have plans for more, definitely this again next year, but possibly some other opportunities in between. The goal has always been that as we get better organized and feel more solid in the infrastructure, which I think we're close, that we would keep sort of back pocket projects, smaller projects that don't necessarily require intense construction, so that I wouldn't have to have a site or a construction coordinator on site, but small things like scrape and paint, or you know, maybe replacing a window or a door, or those kinds of things, because I get calls throughout the year, and then my connections with like the Center of Life and like some of the other nonprofits, through those connections, they'll get calls, and then they get forwarded on to me. Hey, we need such and such. Hey, we have such and that. So when outside teams or our business says, hey, I want to do a community, we want to do a community service day with our business, or we have youth coming, we want to bring in youth, you know, what can we do? Then we've got some of those sort of back pocket, just some smaller projects in a file that, that they can take, that we've already vetted it, we've already set it up, we've already verified what's needed, obviously verified. For those that don't know, we only work with owner-occupied. We don't do this on rentals. And it's all done through the partnership that we have with the city. So for me, that's huge, just that there were so many people involved. Everything up to the first year that we did the housing projects, everything that we did as Pulse was bringing the churches together so that we were all serving together. So when we brought on the house projects, that's where we really started going after getting the whole community involved. So that our whole community is serving. We're on the same team. We're out there helping each other out, and we're not griping about our neighbor, but we're helping. And so that's just kind of a glimpse of what we're doing. So let me get you to the pictures, because everybody wants to see these. This is house number 1. And you can see from the picture on the top that they had already kind of started. They had lapboard siding. It was in pretty bad condition. They had replaced their windows, and they had started replacing siding with some, not T111, but whatever it is. There was some debate about that this year. And so you can see from the picture on the bottom that we finished out the siding. We picked up where they left off. We trimmed out all of the doors and windows. And you can't really see it, but if you look on the front porch, on the post, there's a tiny little white smudge, and that white smudge is actually the granddaughter's handprint. The family, the whole family, was on the ground working on this home with us all 4 days. Even family that didn't live there but lived in Weatherford were coming in every day, and they were working all 4 days. So the granddaughter, at the end of the project, they put her handprint on there, and she was just so moved and just so excited about it that she wanted everybody to know. And so I love that. So that handprint is there. It's the first thing anybody comes to their house is going to see. And so hopefully they tell the story about people in Mineral Wells care. That there are people here who cared enough, and they came and they sweated in terrible heat, and they worked on our house for 4 days for nothing in return. So I love that. So that's our house number 1. And this family, again, they were all on the ground with us, and they have asked to stay connected because they want to come help with future projects. Here's our house number 2. And this house was primarily replacing windows and then paint and scrape on the siding and then retrimming everything out. And the issue here was we actually replaced, I think, all of her windows. And it was because there had been trouble with vandalism in the neighborhood, so all the windows had been BB shot out. So we're just praying that, that this is one of the homes where several people would drive by and say, thank you for working on this home. It's such a blessing. We're so glad you're here. My hope is that there was just sort of some community togetherness about that, and that hopefully we won't see that vandalism problem continue. So that's our house number 2. This is house number 3, and it was the big project. We actually tore out the roof on this one, scraped and painted siding, pulled down the shutters and repainted them. This was the big project. This, if you follow our Facebook page, the stories for this house will just absolutely, they will move you. But this is another one, and so, I forgot to sign. Another cool thing about this one is at the end of day 4, the homeowner texted me and she said, hey, will you guys come by here before you leave for the day? And so we got there, and she had made us, out of the cutoff from the decking, we had to replace a lot of the decking on her roof, and so this, there was lots of like plywood cutoffs. And so from that cutoff, she had made a sign, and it said, Mission Mineral Wells, give due, be the hope. And she presented that to us, and there was another couple from the team that were there, and so we actually got a picture of that, and I meant to bring that for you all to see. But it just was really exciting because this year it was, there was a lot more, there just was a lot more hope in it. Like it was great last year, and we loved our homeowners, and our teams were awesome, our site captains were great, but something different this year. They were just, they were a part of it. They were here to help. By the way, from one of our homeowners last year, if you remember the stories from last year, we had a single dad out there, and he had been, as he was able, working on his home, and just didn't have the finances or the time to finish it. And so he was one of the projects that we did. Well, he has since been on every project that he helped us go back and finish the park. He was out working on this home and on home number 1. Like, he has stayed with us. And so that's one of those stories that we make a difference. It's more than 4 days we're working on somebody's house and then bam, it's over. No, the ripples from this just continue. So there are projects, and so everybody's asking me the last few days, was it a success? How do you feel about it? This, yes, we finished the homes. So if you're looking at did we finish, yes, it was a success. We finished our homes. They are complete. I think the dumpster finally has been moved away. But here, this is for me. This is success for me. The whole community came together, and obviously I don't mean every person, but people from every part of the community were there, being a part of that, serving or giving or donating or whatever. We had tons more people that are connecting with the Facebook page saying, how can we help? I want to get involved. To me, that means hope. It means that we have some real hope in the community. The homeowners have hope that they haven't had in a long time because they saw somebody come out and give of themselves for 4 days for nothing in return. And so, and then the people that have been watching all this unfold and happen, there's some hope there. There actually are people that care, and they're not out to see what they can get for themselves. They're actually out to help because they love this community. And so this is just kind of the end. And again, a lot of the kids, I don't think it was this one. I think this was from a prep day, but on one of the actual 4 days on the ground, one of the kiddos said, so, and he made this, he said, do you actually become a superhero when you come out and help? And so we're like, actually, yes, you do. So I got my cape out, I wrapped it on him, I took some pictures of him, we did a fun little video, and I was like, yes, you do, you're a superhero. And so, and I would just say the same to everybody that was out there, all the businesses that donated, all the organizations that donated, and people that were on the ground with us, and people that were just helping get the word out, and you all are superheroes. This has been one of the most amazing things I've ever been a part of in my life, and it's because you all make it awesome. So that's what I have for you, and I'm open to any questions.
It's one of the grandest things, I'll agree.
Yeah.
It is an awesome thing to be a part of. The part that I guess that touches me the most is watching lives change, as you described. The gentleman whose house we worked on last year being the first one to sign up to come work on someone else's house this year. And people that are touched don't keep it to themselves. They then in turn become part of it, and that just really blesses. It's an honor to be a part. Thank you.
I love seeing the community come together. I love seeing the work and the improvements. Very thankful for that.
Yes, and we just want to thank Pastor T. Without having a home base really close to the homes, oh my goodness, the logistics for us would have been crazy. So we just want to say, thank you for just like opening the doors, giving us a key, and turning us loose. So it was a huge saver each day of the work that we did. So
Thank you so much, Rose.
thank you.
Wish all the agenda items could be like that, just enjoyable. Moving on though, we're going to conduct a public hearing to consider a replat of all of Lot 10, 11, 12, Block 12 of Pasadena Heights addition to the city of Mineral Wells. Lance, go ahead and explain.
Yes, if you would, Mr. Mayor, open the public hearing for us, please, sir.
Not sure how I open that.
Just say the time and announce that we're opening a public hearing at that time.
Excellent. Yes, we'll open a public hearing at 6:40.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members, you have before you a plat that was presented, a replat that was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission at its meeting on June the 4th. If you were to look on page 20, you'll find an aerial photo that identifies the location of this particular action. And on page 19, you'll find a copy of the plat itself. You'll see that essentially this is just a plat that somewhat cleans up an existing issue on the property. Essentially what this plat does is to take 3 smaller lots, plat them into 2 larger lots so that they can meet all of the setback requirements and so forth of our ordinances. Again, this was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission at its meeting on June the 4th. There was no opposition to the plat request. The commission voted unanimously to recommend approval, and we bring that recommendation to the council at this time.
What's the pleasure of the council here?
Well, Mr. Mayor, you need to ask if there are any other comments
Okay,
and then close the hearing if you would.
Are there any comments from anyone? Alrighty, then we'll close the public hearing at 6:41. Now do I go ahead and ask for a motion? Okay, excellent.
Make a motion, we approve the replat as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Agenda item number 7, consider approval of guidelines for filming in Mineral Wells, Texas, and participation in the Texas Film Commission and Film Friendly Texas program.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members, we talk a lot about economic development in our community, and one of the areas that is not often thought about as far as an economic engine in our state of Texas is that of film production. Those of you may be aware that the state actually does, through the governor's office, have a Texas Film Commission, and they actually try to solicit production companies to come into the state of Texas. There are also incentives that the state provides to bring production companies into the state of Texas, as typically these productions have or can have a fairly significant economic impact in the localities where they are filming. We've been working with the Chamber of Commerce over the past several months to become a part of what is called Film Friendly Texas, which is part of the Texas Film Commission programming. Essentially what we would do is, if we adopt certain guidelines that are provided to us as a template, if you will, or guide, through the Texas Film Commission, then we can become a part of the Texas Film Friendly program, or Film Friendly Texas program, and then we would have potentially referrals of productions to our community and hopefully garner the economic benefit of that. What you have provided to you are the guidelines that we have prepared for the City of Mineral Wells for filming in Mineral Wells. Again, these follow the guidelines that are recommended through the Texas Film Commission, and we have tailored those to meet basically our needs here locally, but for the most part they do follow the guidelines that the state recommends. We would recommend the City Council approve those guidelines that you have before you and approve our participation in the Film Friendly Texas program so that we might be able to entice film productions into our community and better our community environment.
It looked like, Mr. City Manager, it looked like due to the requirement or idea of having the street closure requests go
Yes.
through the office of the city manager, that there would be a side benefit of streamlining the street closure process for other activities.
Yes, that's true. If you were to look at the next item on your agenda, one of, as Ms. Watson indicated, one of the issues that you do find whenever production companies come into your community is they will oftentimes need to have a street or right-of-way or public properties temporarily closed. The process that we have traditionally gone through, based on what is required in our code of ordinances, is that any street closures, be they temporary or permanent, are required to go through the City Council, be approved through the City Council. What we are finding in the materials that are provided to us through the state is that oftentimes these production companies have a fairly short string as far as the amount of advance notice that they give a community that they would like to film in their community. Depending on the timetable when we might receive a request for a temporary street closure, it can be as much as 3 weeks to get before the City Council, get those approvals, and oftentimes that would not be adequate time to respond to a request from a film production company. So that if you look at the next item on your agenda on page 51, we have worked through our city attorney to see if we could amend the city code whereby temporary street closures are authorized through an administrative procedure through the city manager's office. That would, as Ms. Watson said, just streamline our process, generally speaking, and would allow us to be flexible enough to respond to production companies that may come in and want to do a production here that would require a street closure, and us not have to call a special meeting of the City Council or just basically have to tell them we couldn't meet their timetable. So yes, these two items do go hand in hand if the council sees fit to approve it.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not real educated on film production and movie making and all that kind of stuff, but I have a very good friend who is a producer, director, and a member of the Screen Actors Guild, and I contacted him and I asked him to peruse this, and he was like, yes, you guys, that's a good start, you guys want to do that, and I will bring you some more information and help you be even a better Texas-friendly town for being in the right place at the right time and having our name out there. And so he sent me an email, and I asked his permission to make copies and make you all aware of it. So I am gonna, after tonight's meeting, I'm gonna ask Peggy to make copies of his information and his willingness to come and speak with us as a group or correspond with each of you individually to help us even do more than just this beginning. But he says this is an awesome responsibility, an awesome opportunity, and that we should approve this.
I had a opportunity in years past to visit with the president of the Bastrop Chamber of Commerce, which did have one critical film filmed in their community to kind of kickstart their foray into the film industry. It was Hope Floats. I don't think it won any Oscars, but it was their chamber president said the film opportunity that one thing provided was transformative for their community. So with that, I need readers, I'm sorry. I make a motion approving guidelines for filming in Mineral Wells, Texas, and participation in the Texas Film Commission Film Friendly Texas program.
I'll second.
Well, any discussion, or I thought we were gonna combine 8 and 9?
Mr. Mayor,
It's
if
an
the motion
ordinance.
is seconded by Amy, go ahead and complete the, and then you can go on to the next time.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. On to the next item, which is in a similar vein that we've already talked about. Do I have any motions for?
Move that we approve an ordinance, the City of Mineral Wells, Texas, amending Chapter 78 of the Mineral Wells Code of Ordinances to authorize administrative approval of temporary street closures, providing a repealer and severability clause, providing for publication, providing for a penalty, and providing an effective date.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Alright, item number 9, consider award of bid in amount of $1,062,292.50 to B&L Construction Company for the 16-inch water line installation project, Phase 1, Highway US 81.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm asking to award the bid of $1,062,292.50 to B&L Construction Company for 16-inch water line installation Phase 1 of Highway 180 West.
How many bids did we get on that?
We received 6 bids.
Six.
If you look on page 57 of your
Yeah.
packet, you'll see the engineer's recommendation. 2 of the bids were non-responsive, as they were not on original documents as required by the specifications. But the engineer was quite pleased with the bid. The engineer's estimate was right at $1.3 million. So we feel like this is a very attractive bid. And his feeling is this puts us in a very good position to do the next phase of the project, and that we appear to have more than adequate funding to complete the project. So the engineer was very pleased with the bid that we received, and is familiar with the contractor. He has worked with them previously, and they are very reputable and do good work.
What's the time frame on this? Basic time frame to completion, not necessarily start.
We would have to get back with you. Or actually, we can get a copy of the spec book and determine that for you if you'd like for us to do that. I believe that they anticipated being completed by the end of the year, end of the calendar year. Somewhere in that vicinity, about a 4 to 5 month time period.
I'll make a motion, we award the bid in the amount of $1,062,292.50 to B&L Construction for the 16-inch water line installation project, Phase 1 on US Highway 180 West.
All in favor?
Second.
Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to item number 12, discussion of possible action regarding annexation issues. I'm going to roll 10 and 11. I'm going to roll 10 and 11 to the end of the meeting for our executive session likely.
Mr. Mayor, if you still, it's a good idea to go ahead and,
Mr. Mayor, it's a good idea to go ahead and request the motion to, on those items, if you're wanting to move them, to go ahead and do that now with the council, and that way.
Okay.
That way it's done, since we can go in order.
Excellent. Okay, so on items 10 and 11, discuss and consider action relating to COs required for residential properties and consider electric aggregation proposal. I have some questions for legal counsel on the following two agenda items, and I would like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to speak with our attorney we go into our executive session at the very end, the last item.
Courtney, in your opinion, is that a legal use of the?
Yeah, I mean, he's asking for my opinion, and that's a reason to go into executive session. It's allowed under the Open Meetings Act.
I make a motion that we move the items.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. We'll move it to the end. Item number 12. Thank you, John, for stepping up. Discuss and possible action regarding annexation issue.
For those of you new to the council, been a year or two ago, time's gone by very fast. We talked about annexing some property into the city, specifically our water plant south of town. We talked about it and kind of really never went much further with it. However, some things have happened that have made this a little more interesting and probably have put a sense of urgency out there that we might need to consider if we want to do this or not. Our neighbors to the east, well, let me back up. Last year, the legislature passed a new law, Senate Bill 6. And Senate Bill 6 has what is called a Tier 1 and a Tier 2 county. The Tier 1 county is generally a county with less than 500,000 population, which obviously we fall in, as well as our neighbors to the east. Our neighbors further to the east, obviously, are a Tier 2 county, which is over 500,000 and above, and the neighbors further to the east are as well. So there is provision in Senate Bill 6, though, that upon a petition in an election, petition to the county commissioners, election has to be held to become a Tier 2 county. Well, Parker County has had such a petition presented to them. An election has been called for November. Why does that affect us? Well, being that part of our city's in Parker County, Section 43.001 of the Local Government Code says any city that's wholly or partly in a county that becomes a Tier 2 county becomes a Tier 2 city. So it's very, in my opinion, a very poorly written law, but nobody cares what I think. So we have to deal with the reality of the situation here. So I believe that this measure is going to pass in Parker County, that Parker County will become a Tier 2 county, which will severely limit our annexation ability going forward. And my understanding is that once that election happens, that they will become a Tier 2 city then. So we have till November to do any annexations that we want, and then we become dead in the water, essentially. So, that being said, we have made contingency plans of sorts based upon this eventuality to start annexing to south to our water plant, which is property that we own, essentially, to bring to the city. There's a lot of benefits to doing it right now. If there's any kind of an incident out there, it would fall to the county to handle it, the sheriff's office and I guess the volunteer fire department. Is that right? Yes. So it's a piece of property that we own, essentially, that we have really no control over in the event there's an incident, for one. And if we essentially own it, why isn't it in our city? So those are just things to consider. So now that we are facing this deadline of potentially becoming a Tier 2 city from a poorly written law by the legislature, we need to make some decisions about what we want to do. Now, again, as staff has made some contingency plans, so we could go ahead and begin the annexation process to get down there. And that's all we're talking about, is getting to the water plant. We're not talking about going to Interstate 20 or anything like that. We're just talking about getting down to the water plant. And we can talk about the mechanics and everything about it later, because there's a lot of things we need to work out. But I guess really what we're looking for from council at the moment is some direction on what your thoughts are about doing that, knowing that, and of course our attorney's here, if you have any legal questions, general legal questions about it, and I've read quite a bit up on this, and I've talked to TML Legal about this as well. But assuming that election goes through November in Parker County, which again I think pretty solidly that it will, we will become a Tier 2 city, and we will be the only Tier 2 city in Palo Pinto County. So every other city in Palo Pinto County will be able to annex all they want, subject to general law rules, of course, and any of the legislative mandated rules in effect. We won't. We will be dead in the water.
So when you talk about annexing south to the water plant, does that take any residential areas from here to there, or are you just carving out that one portion of land?
Well, annexations do have to be contiguous, so we really would have to look at that, but really it's just pretty much ag land between here and there for the most part. I mean, we'd have to really look at it, and we'd have to come back with a better strategy, but right now we're just talking conceptually. I mean, we'd have to work out the details, which we're not quite there yet.
How far is this?
About 6-7 miles, roughly.
Is there any other direction we're considering going besides south?
Well, we haven't really discussed anything else. That was really the primary emphasis of what we as staff have talked about. Now, of course, council has any other ideas, certainly staff will be at your direction. We can work with whatever you want us to do.
Are there any other city properties lingering out in the outlying areas? The Fossil Park, I would guess, is sort of not connected to the city. Is there anything else?
I have to defer to the city manager on that. I'm not aware of anything.
No, that's really the primary facility that's outside the city limits.
My thought would be if there's a consensus among the council to ask you guys to continue to move forward and give us some direction in this, I certainly would want to include looking west. I believe that supports the water line we just approved going out there, which allows us the opportunity for expansion west, and so I certainly would want that in consideration as well.
So just for clarification, out towards the Fossil Park, or to bring the Fossil Park in, is that just for clarity? Or are you just talking about
That would be good parameters to begin with, yes, to bring at least far enough to bring the Fossil Park in, and if really early in consideration, so I don't know that we could really go that far, but that would be a good place to start, and then we can adjust.
Okay, now of course there's always a lot, annexation law is very complicated and convoluted, so.
I understand completely. That's why I'm thinking I don't know that we can get there, but it's a starting place, and we'll just have to see how that works. But as just a general thought, in support of putting the water line in out west, thinking that that might be a possible opportunity for us to look at some places for the industrial expansion that is on everyone's mind. It's something we certainly should look at if we're going to look at annexation at all.
I have a question. I assume there will be some financial ramifications in the sense that don't you have to provide city services into the annexed areas? I mean, I don't expect you to have numbers, but.
Well, those are some of the things we're looking at right now. That's a great question. But again, we're looking at a number of options. And that is one of them for sure.
I know they change the laws all the time. The last time I was familiar, I think you had 3 years to provide those services. But yes, there are some financial obligations that would come with it.
Yeah, I think I think staff needs to look into it and kind of give us a better idea of what we're looking at. But with the timeline of November, I think it's something we need to get the ball rolling on. Just get back to us.
So we can come back. We'll do everything we can to come back at the next meeting with something.
Yeah.
And so I guess do we need a motion anything from them, or it's just a direction?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So just so I'm clear, we're getting direction from council to go south to the water plant or water plant and west to the fossil park. Is that clear? Am I right? Okay.
Yes.
You have a question, Mr. Bill?
May I ask?
Actually, John, are you finished?
I am.
Yeah. I don't think we have any other discussion up here. Were there any questions from the audience? Did you have a question, Mr. Info? If so, could you come up to the microphone, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Vincent Hemphill. I live at 4112 Northeast 5th Street.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
My question is for John. I mean, can I address him? Is that?
No, you need to address the
Okay,
council.
maybe y'all can answer it. So, John was talking about speaking that we're gonna be into a tier 2 because Mineral Wells is partly into Parker County. So, I didn't hear it about what that it is entitling us to. What's the benefits, what's the pros, what's the cons, what actually happens? So is there anything bad that happens? Anything, I mean, what does it mean?
Sounds like it limits your annexation authority.
Correct.
That's it? That's all it does?
So the other towns around us will be able to annex the land surrounding us, and we won't have the opportunity to after November if Weatherford decides to vote.
And that's it though? There's nothing
That's
else?
correct.
Just, okay, fair enough. Awesome, thank y'all.
Cheers. All right, consider approval on an interlocal agreement with Jack County to house municipal court prisoners.
Previously, we've been housing our municipal court prisoners at Palo Pinto County. And about a year ago, you may recall approving a agreement, well, approximately a year ago for Parker County. Maybe it wasn't quite that long ago. Just so for you who are new to the council, we have, I got in trouble last time I used the word prisoners. Scofflaws. I think the Seinfeld episode was White Whale.
Hooligans.
Hooligans, okay. I don't know what the politically correct word is, so I'll just use prisoners, and y'all can beat me up after the meeting if you want to. Anyway, the people who don't pay their fines get into big trouble with the judge. So when they don't pay their fines, I send our bailiff or / warrant officer out to get them, or the judge does, excuse me. And so there has to be a deterrent for not paying their fines. And the deterrent is they go to jail. Well, we've had some problems in the last couple of years sending them to jail because of overcrowding and issues that I'm not sure that I'm as versed in as Chief Sullivan is, and if you have any specific questions to that, I'm sure I'd be happy to answer that. I'm not as good a person to ask as he is. When we first started this up with Palo Pinto County, you know, we were putting them in jail left and right, and they were paying their fines left and right. And we were clearing up a lot of warrants, as we should. But since we've not been able to house our people who don't pay their fines, we've seen a drastic decrease in the fines being paid and a drastic increase in warrants backing up. And you'll see that when we do our audit and everything else later this year. So Chief Sullivan and I and City Manager have all been putting our heads together trying to find solutions to this problem. And one of the solutions that we've been working on for quite some time is with Jack County. And they've been working with us, I guess you could say, trying to come up with a solution. And they passed a contract a while back, and I mean a long time ago, but we've never seen the contract show up here. And I mean a long time ago. So we just decided to take the matters in our own hands and come up with a contract, which you have before you tonight, and have our council approve it, and we'll send it up to them and have them approve it. And talking to their sheriff, they have plenty of room in the jail, so here we go. So we're going to ask the council to approve this contract, or excuse me, interlocal agreement with Jack County, and we will send it to them for approval, hopefully, and then we'll be able to send our people that don't pay their tickets up there, and we'll clear up some of these warrants. So I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
So at $46 a day, is that for one inmate or is that for the?
That's one inmate per day, and that's probably a little below the going rate, quite frankly.
How much are we receiving back in warrants that were
Well,
getting paid?
that's a tough question to answer because, you know, we get people with, you know, a few $100s in warrants, and we get people with tens of thousands of dollars in warrants. And, you know, it's funny how going to jail will shake the money loose from them. It just does. I'll tell you, I wouldn't want to go to jail, and I'll pay whatever it takes to get out, frankly. And that just is that's what it takes. I mean, that's just the way it is.
And you said Parker County's full, that's why we're not.
I'll defer to Chief Sullivan on that one.
It's pretty cool. It's what was the rate we're paying Parker County, similar to this?
How many, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I assume we're responsible for the cost of transporting at least one way.
Yes. And also, we have written into the agreement that if there's any medical fees or any medical issues, that they'll just charge them from the jail, and we won't be responsible for that. So we try to cover every base that we can think of. And, you know, it's like anything else, there's always some kind of wild card that pops up that you don't ever anticipate. But we think in the 5 years that we've been doing this, we've not really gotten hit by anything that we didn't anticipate. So it's been a pretty successful program.
I'm just a little confused by the mention of Parker County. Was Parker County our previous backup to Palo Pinto County?
Yes, sir.
And so this new agreement will make Jack County still a backup to Palo Pinto County. And so what's the procedure to determine which place they go? Do you just call over to the jail and they say, yeah, I got space? Or no, I don't?
So basically, after the judge sees a prisoner and the prisoner has determined that they would rather be remanded into custody rather than bring forth their fine, we would make a call, the clerk would make a call to still Palo Pinto first and determine if they have any bed space. And then to Parker County, Jack County, and we're working on a county to the south so that we kind of have the four corners of the globe covered to give us some alternatives and the deterrent effort. But this isn't easy. A lot of these jails are dealing with a shortage of jailers, and so when you're under Texas jail standards, there's actually a ratio of the guards to inmate populations. And so if they don't have enough jailers, then they can only hold so many people. It wouldn't matter how many beds they have. And that's what we're finding. And then the other counties, just a consistent backlog, and they simply, in defense of our sheriff, he doesn't have the room. And like we've discussed before, he only has 20 beds for female prisoners, so that's a problem as well.
Thank
you. Yes.
And did I understand you correctly, this is not the first contract of this kind that's been presented to Jack County?
No, they.
There was a failure to approve the other one, or? I
We
was
had
confused on
negotiated
that.
with them previously, just preliminary, trying to, vet out what their rate would be that they would require so that we could come, John could look at the courts and come to the council. And I guess some counties do things a little different, so that was good to go. But we certainly require, for our auditors' purposes, something in writing, something in agreement, whether it's reciprocal or direct and indirect, and we just don't have that. And so, John's been kind enough to get this, and we're just going to carry it up there, and they either are or they aren't.
But this isn't something you would necessarily anticipate they'd have a problem with.
don't
It's just a
think so.
ratification of maybe
Yeah,
the gentleman's agreement.
What we needed from our business standards without knowing, I'm certain that the language is good, but we simply don't have a copy to present to y'all and to this community in openness and transparency about why money may be leaving the house to go pay for prisoner housing in another county. We need that agreement just to kind of solidify the whole process.
I'm not a law enforcement professional, but.
You want to be?
No. I did not apply, I've not applied for
Oh,
the
man.
Program at Weatherford
Well, we're
Hall.
hiring.
But I would guess that there's some idea that dealing with these low-level offenses helps ward off future more serious problems.
Now, that's a philosophical argument. I mean, we've had tickets since every one of us have been around, including Lance, and that's just one of those processes in our criminal justice system. You've seen a lot of movement in the legislature, and in some cases throughout the nation, where they're trying to decriminalize through other programs like the juveniles. Because that really hasn't proven to be a good deterrent and doesn't obviously encourage the exacting behavior you would like to see. I don't know on the fine side of some things. It's a philosophical argument, it's my opinion, but it is what it is, and that's the constructs of our current framework, and so that's operating within that. Anything outside of that, I guess the council could tell us, you don't want us to. Well, that was good. Reverend, you want to take the shot?
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Any questions about the municipal court, I guess, and how it functions within this contract?
I see you, hold on a second.
Just one other point. So we've had a hard time filling some of our jobs, including one of our part-time jobs. So I'm actually going to convert one of those to a transport officer so that we can keep your Mineral Wells police officers on the street here at home protecting you. But this person, they'll be available kind of an on-call. It's a local person, and they can do the transporting so that if we're going, 37 miles, 41 miles, wherever we got to go, within the contiguous county area, they can transport. Just in case that question comes up, I've already kind of got ahead of that. All right?
Thank you.
So we've tried to iron out all the bugs ahead of time that we could think of, but any other questions?
I don't have any questions to you.
No, I make a motion to accept staff recommendation to enter into an interlocal agreement with Jack County to house municipal court prisoners.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Can I still go ahead and answer or accept a question from someone? No?
I would recommend that. Now, there's just a reason for that, and then at the beginning of the meeting, you provide a time for citizen comment, right? For people to opine, and if during the meeting, if citizens happen to have questions that come up, then I know the city staff is always available during the week to answer different questions. But, you know, for the sake of your role in the meeting and decorum, and that's just typically the best way to run a meeting. So I'm offering that to you, just, yeah.
Sure, I appreciate it. And since I'd already motioned him up, I'm allowed. Robert, can you go ahead and ask your question? Keep it to 1 minute, please.
Yes, sir. My question's gonna be actually for John. He can tell me if it can be done or not. If we're gonna send these guys and gals to Jack County if we have to, if they deem it that they're gonna have to go to Jack County, can that be tacked onto their fine and make them pay for the transportation cost up there?
That's a great,
I mean, that would be
great question.
That would be a fair deal, because I know a lot of counties that do it. Denton County used to do it. If they had to go 200 miles to get you and bring you back on a warrant, guess what? It was tacked onto your sentence. So,
It's a
I
good
mean, that
question.
would
I
be,
appreciate it.
that's just something I had to think of. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Say again.
Your legal counsel can
Legal counsel, then.
If you can add that on, it's my understanding that no, fines are set by the state, by the Code of Criminal Procedure, so that's what you can assess.
Okay.
Perhaps that's changed since Denton County's done that, but.
Be worth looking into. So, thank you. Thank you.
Anybody has any further questions about any of that? I'm here during the day, 8 to 5.
Excellent. Thanks, John. Item number 14, consider resolution authorizing the submission of 2018 Clean Fleets North Texas grant application.
You recall a previous meeting that we had asked you for permission to submit a grant to replace a dump truck. The Council of Governments was willing to pay 25% of the cost of a new dump truck, and we approved it, and pretty much looks like we're going to get that grant for the dump truck, 25%. And I've all but got the official approval on that. They told me I have to go to a mandatory class in July. Oh, by the way, Lance, I forgot to tell you about that. So anyway, so we probably got that grant. However, they did tell me that there is some additional money, that if I apply by the end of June, that there's some additional money for off-road diesel vehicles, which means that we could get 25% grant for something like a backhoe or equivalent to that. So I talked to Public Works and asked them, okay, what is it that you need most of all? And it had to fit within a certain parameter of years, and it had to be a certain horsepower and this sort of thing. So they came back and they told me what the thing they needed most was a front end loader. So that is very useful to them apparently for street work and just general maintenance types things, clearing debris and such as that. And I haven't got an exact price, but it's somewhere between $100,000 to $125,000. So the lowest amount we'll get on that is 25%, up to 35%, depending on the engine and the emissions on it. And so obviously I'll try to get the most amount that I can, but minimum that we would get awarded is 25%. So I'm here tonight to ask you for permission to apply for that grant to potentially replace that front end loader with a 25% grant from the North Central Texas Council of Governments. We would have to budget for it this year. Talking to the city manager, it would probably come out of water, maybe some out of street, mostly out of water. We'd have to kind of work some more on that, but it would go in this upcoming year fiscal budget because that's when it would be awarded. And course, you do the math, 25% of $100,000 is $25,000, or up to $35,000, depending on the cost of it, of course. So that's kind of where we're at. It's your decision on how you want to approach it. We already are doing for the dump truck now, and that's coming out of the water and streets tentatively. So we'd be adding on another chunk of change, so to speak. But I don't know if the grant will be there next year or not. This is the first time I've seen a grant like this in a long, long time, and I think we've got a pretty good shot at getting it.
John, you might want to mention that if we are successful, that we probably lease purchase this, so it
Yes.
wouldn't be $100,000
Yes,
for
thank
next
you.
year's budget.
Yeah.
Probably about 25 to 30.
Yes, that's a good point, thank you. Yeah, that was an important point I forgot to mention.
Does that go for the other grant as well?
Yes.
Lease purchase? Okay.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
And so if you were to be awarded the grant and then we decided we just couldn't afford the 25K,
We would just
no harm, no foul, we just
Right.
return the grant. But does that hurt us for applying for future grants? I would think it would.
I would, that's hard to say, I don't think so, but, it's not something that you would want to do all the time. I think if you say, they're going to come after us with torches and pitchforks if we spend too much more money, then I think they'd understand. But
I think it sounds like something we certainly should submit for, since we have time to accommodate it in this next budget.
You have not because you've asked not.
Yeah, I hate to pass up any kind of grant money if it's out there. If we get it, it's free money towards something we need. So I think it's worth putting the application in, seeing how it goes, and going from there.
Any motions from or any other questions from council?
Move that we approve the resolution authorizing the submission of the North Central Texas Council of Government Clean Fleets North Texas 2018 grant, and authorize the city manager to execute all associated paperwork and submission of the grant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0.
one real quick comment. I will say that this is one time Parker County works in our favor.
Roger that. Item number 15, discuss and take possible action regarding funding request submitted by Mineral Wells Senior Center and Pulse Ministries.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Most of y'all have my comments as an exhibit behind this agenda item commentary. However, I just would like to say that as a member of the Mayor's Subcommittee on Nonprofit Grants, that since the committee made its recommendation to the council, and since that the city staff is already working on preliminary numbers for next year's budget, and we have provided them information from our meeting back in May, I felt it appropriate to ask us to consider, now that we have received these applications from two other entities that we have a history of assisting in the past, so that we could give both city staff and the committee that's been appointed to assist the city manager at his request with the preliminary 2018-2019 budget. And so I would ask that we consider these applications, and if it revises an anticipated number that this council is looking for with regard to nonprofit grants in next year's budget, that we could have that revised information available as we go through the preparations for the preliminary budget.
When did Pulse Ministries submit their application?
I didn't look at the date on it, but it was
last Thursday?
I have a copy of it in my packet, I'm sure, I just didn't look at the date on it.
The senior center submitted theirs at the last council meeting.
Thank you.
The Pulse Ministries application is dated June 11th.
Is Rose still here?
No, she had another,
Okay. I guess my question to council is, when we make a determination on this, and maybe I should direct this towards city manager, what comes from the vote? If the budget is the real litmus test for finances, let me ask it this way, I guess, how much money is set aside for nonprofits? Do we have an allocation that's set aside in the budget for nonprofits?
We do not have anything specific at the moment. What we have done is, in working with preliminary drafts of the general fund budget, we have included numbers that the council has tentatively recommended. So we do not have those other numbers included in for either of these two organizations. If the council so directs us, then we would include those numbers in and work with those numbers.
And then the two members on the committee, Councilwoman Reagan and Councilman Doyle, what numbers do y'all use for determining how much of an allocation is given to each of the nonprofits?
I don't know that there's a calculation or a determination made in my mind as we went through the process. We asked staff and I researched where our current budget numbers looked in the projection status, and it looked like projected numbers would indicate that we would probably be in about the same revenue situation that we were last year, and so I was just anticipating a number similar to what was approved in this year's budget.
And how does the application work for nonprofits? What are they submitting? Are we submitting and getting what information? Because obviously they're going to submit and say we'd like this much money.
We get, it's pretty extensive. We get copies of budgets, we get proof of good standing, a detailed description of what the money will be used for, and which they also have to be accountable for the next year if they were to resubmit an application. So.
Do we get any of their tax records? Yes?
Yeah, there's the process that, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, the council put in place when they put this procedure and process in place requires that that they submit a current board of directors, their bylaws, their prior year budget, and then they are also, if they have received funding from us in the past, then they also have reporting requirements of how that money was expended so that there is the accountability there.
And I know even when we discussed this, we mentioned it up here before, we did anticipate a late application from both of these organizations. Was really 57,000, I believe, correct, was the initial number, and then even with both of these applications, if they are approved as submitted, would still be below, I think, what was provided the year before that by the council.
And 57,000 is what number again?
What's already been approved
I
by the
think
council.
it's the number that's currently recommended that staff is working with based on the applications that we had received at the time that we
Right.
made the presentation to the council.
I can get that file if you need those.
No, I've looked through it. It's excluding the Industrial Foundation, which I know we don't have to keep a file on them for the same request for money. I see the good that the industries or the nonprofits such as Pulse and even Senior Center and Center of Life, all these are doing. And I don't know how we make a determination as council, say which nonprofit's going to get what money. I know Councilwoman Beth, you had talked about a return on investment. It was maybe a criteria you would use for nonprofits.
I think that was me, yeah.
Megan?
And we discussed that because it was new. We were talking about in the meeting. We don't have a specific policy on the parameters of what that includes, and that may be something we need to look at going forward. But this year we need to continue it.
Can y'all help me understand, because I'm new here, when I look at nonprofit funding, I see that, first of all, dealing with taxpayer money, I see that as the primary. I mean, that's all of our money. I believe that we should be giving that, taking care of the infrastructure and public safety first and foremost. I would see the nonprofits, while they are wonderful and tremendous help to our city and town, I would like to see what we're primarily tasked with taken care of first. Have we considered any other options for helping the nonprofits that are vital inside of our town?
I think there's been lots of consideration over the years. And yes, absolutely. If they don't need our assistance, I've told you before, I have lots of places I could use this. We could take the items off that line item and put them somewhere else. But the citizens of my ward and the people that I talk to in this community tell me that this does need to be a higher priority than some of the other things that are not getting met in our budget currently. And whether we fund the Mineral Wells Senior Center through the nonprofits grant program, or whether we go back and put it on the line item as a contract obligation, we are obligated by contract to fund Mineral Wells Senior Center.
Well, I would just like to add that I believe taking care of our seniors and our children, and that's what a lot of this pertains to with Pulse Ministries. We just saw the demonstration of what wonderful work they did on those houses. I think that's just as important as some of the other things that we worry about, making sure that we have in our budget. So I think it's the right thing for us to do. We have to be conscious about how much we can give. I certainly agree with you on that. But I do think it's something that's our obligation and our privilege to be able to help these folks. And every one of these nonprofits, if you look at it, they've all applied for grants. They're doing that before they're coming to us, and then they're needing assistance, just like we talked about having to have the matching funds for the grants. So that's pretty much what they're asking for from us, is to help facilitate what they've already done with us.
As a general rule, I feel like, first of all, I believe in grace. There should be grace for the late application. Second of all, I believe the council should retain the budgetary authority to contract with nonprofits that provide services to the community that fulfill things that we cannot run programs for on our own, but otherwise might choose to. So I would be supportive of including those into the budgetary discussions.
Yeah, I agree with Tammy and Beth and Dole. I mean, I think we've got to fund them, and they do great things for our community, and I think it's part of what our community needs to help fund.
Mr. Mayor, I was involved in what was awarded this spring as a member of the mayor's committee last time. They do bring in enough information for you to see how many people are involved in their efforts to without doubt, see that they are making a difference for people who are disadvantaged and in need. in this city. It was, I felt like a heavy responsibility, yet I felt like it seems to be working for us in the city to partner with the not-for-profits. And I'd like to see us go ahead and partner with the Senior Center and Pulse Ministries this year.
And I'm all for partnering with the nonprofits. I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding there inside of that. I am for that. I am just wanting to find and see if there is a better way and a better option to fund them. For example, I'll ask this question to John, dealing with our finances. I know we have a donations line item. How much money do we receive in donations to our city?
Not very much.
Not very much. How much would you guess?
Not including the animal shelter. Off the top of my head, certainly less than $1,000.
And would you say that's an average going back the last 5 years?
Easy.
Okay. So we don't receive any donations from the Industrial Foundation, for example?
I'll defer to the city manager on that because I don't know.
No, we have typically not.
Okay, I was trying to understand the $200,000 I've seen come in for donations, and I was just thinking that if
Well, it was from a private business. That was not.
it was listed as a donation, so I was just thinking that if we have a donations line item, would it be a worthwhile consideration, instead of taxpayer dollars be used, to take all money that's donated to our city and use that to divvy up between the nonprofits? That's one suggestion.
Amen.
Another option I would consider is, when we look at doing economic growth, which we're tasked with, why can't we set aside someone that is tasked as a grant writer, and that person is now able to write grants for not only the nonprofits but for the businesses coming in town, and yet we're covering that person's salary, and that would be a huge benefit to these nonprofits to have someone. Number three, why don't we look at not having so much duplicity in our nonprofits? I don't want to pick on anyone, but I look at Meals on Wheels and the Senior Center. I know that funding doubles on the state level when you do community meals. Why can't we have more of those meals? Or did we consider that Meals on Wheels, the federal funding, was increased for them this year? Should we decrease our funding on taxpayer money because federal funding was increased? I just want us to consider more options. And for the nonprofits that are here or that are listening online, I care about y'all tremendously. I have a master's degree to be a CFO for a lot of the nonprofits. I've had graduate level grant writing courses. There's money out there, and there are other ways, I believe, that are better ways to fund and finance y'all, and I would love to help facilitate that.
What's a grant writer cost? Salary?
Depends on who you're hiring.
80 grand or?
Yeah, I think you could get one for lower than that.
And that was, you were talking about a staff position potentially for the city.
Correct, throwing out an idea, because if we're going to do economic growth, it would make sense that we have a grant writer that was helping not only the businesses that are here locally, but the businesses coming in, and that person could double over and help nonprofits.
I think not just every nonprofit funding tentative proposal, but such proposals as a grant writer, I think all of that has to be on the table during the budget discussion, because these are, again, any proposals for the nonprofits, or just a temporary kind of, we're going to pencil this in. So,
Well, I just want to make sure that I'm concerned about setting the precedence of taking in applications as recently as last week. And I spoke with Rose last week, actually, after she had put her application. I asked her what would happen to her ministry if she didn't receive funding from the city. And she said nothing, we'd be fine, God would always provide. And I like that spirit, and I think that I feel it's a dangerous precedence to be set to accept applications late and to not follow a process and a procedure that we have in place. And so I just had concerns and questions. Maybe I didn't go about it the right way last meeting.
Yeah.
but I've reached out and spoke to a lot of the directors as well as some of the leaders in these nonprofits, and I would just like us to not be so locked into one way of doing things and consider some other options. That's all I'm asking for. And that I will tell the nonprofits that I do care about y'all, and we will do everything we can to see if we can help. I just also have a responsibility, and I believe we have a responsibility to the taxpayer because it's their money. Thank you.
Amen.
I understand, and I'll just say what we spoke when we spoke on the phone. If there's other funding out there, I'm excited to help you find it. When we get that in place and these nonprofits say they no longer need assistance from the city, I'm all for that, but I know that it takes time for those processes to work, for us to do the things you're talking about doing, and I just refuse to pull the rug out from under them on short notice. And so as the ideas you want to bring forth, yes, let's move forward on whatever of those we can do. Let's get them the help, but we can't not currently do what we're doing till those things come to fruition. And so with that, I would ask that this council give an updated recommendation to staff and the council committee that's going to be working on the preliminary 2018-19 budget to increase that by $20,000, which is $10,000 requested by each of these two entities.
Is that a motion?
I don't think it requires a motion because all we're doing is just updating a recommendation to the council.
Was it 20,000 or 18? I thought it was 10 and 8.
Is it 10 and 8? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought it was 10 and 10. Let me look and see. Pulse is asking for.
10 and 8. The senior center is
Pulse is
10,000.
asking for 10,000 and the senior center is asking for 10,000. So we would update the recommended number by 10,000. It's my understanding it probably doesn't require a motion since we're just giving advance direction to staff for the preliminary budget.
It's my understanding that when you previously brought the other entities before you, you made a motion on the amount, then I would recommend that you also follow that process here to include.
Okay, well in that case I'll make a motion that we increase the recommended funding that we would like to see in the 2018-2019 proposed budget to include $10,000 for Pulse Ministries and $10,000 for the Mineral Senior Center.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Any abstentions? Motion passes 6-1. Alrighty.
On the city's website. Item number 13 is going to be sound funny for about 30 seconds because I had to change batteries because I didn't listen to Lance. Okay. A petition for a local option election for the legal sale of all alcoholic beverages, including mixed beverages, was issued on April 12th to Brent John. The required valid signatures is 35% of the registered voters that voted in the last gubernatorial election. In the 2014 November gubernatorial election, 2,500 people in the city of Mineral Wells voted. Therefore, the amount of valid signatures required equals 875. The petition was returned to me on June 11th, and I have verified 990 valid signatures on the petition. State law requires that an election must be held on or after the 30th day that a petition is returned valid. I will be bringing the order of election to the council at its meeting on July 17th. Due to the timing of this petition, we are required to have a November election. Therefore, we will have to contract with both Palo Pinto and Parker counties, and I will be bringing those contracts to you at a later time. I tried to put it off till May, but the Secretary of State told me no. The legal sale of all alcoholic beverages, including mixed beverages, is the most inclusive of all ballot measure language. Essentially, it allows for the most variety in the types of permits which the ABC could legally issue. If the issue passes, all types of alcohol retailers would be permitted. This includes all permits which allow for off-premise consumption, such as liquor stores, convenience stores, or grocery stores, as well as permits allowing on-premise consumption, such as bars, restaurants, or private clubs, and all classes of alcohol, being beer, wine, and distilled spirits, would be allowed following the election. And I just want to give you an update on that, and I've got my first November election. Yay me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peggy, I just wanted to say thank you. I think that the turnaround time, those folks turned in their petition, and I know that you worked till 8 o'clock at night to just get their confirmation in a few days. So I think your customer service to our citizens should be commended.
So I have item 17, but I would like to do that at the very end just to make sure that I'm trying to tie up the loose ends at the end of these meetings so I can telegraph a little bit more of what we're going to be discussing in 2 weeks, if anything that we know at the time, which obviously we'll probably be discussing the annexation. Is there any way do I need to make a motion to move that so I can do it right after we get out of executive session? I need to make a motion to move that?
Yes, someone does.
Well, if I can make a motion, I'll make a motion to move it till after we get out of, after we reconvene.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. We'll take that up after we come back from executive session. Let me find my reading.
Excuse me, Mayor, you need
Yes.
to, I'm sorry, you need to.
Oh, I know, I was finding my reading. I know how to read this for y'all.
I'm sorry, people are getting up and I just.
It's all right, everybody's faster than me. Not on a soccer field. All right, Mineral Wells City Council will begin its executive session on this 19th day of June 2018 at 7:51 p.m. The subject matter of the executive session deliberation is as follows. In accordance with the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551.071, the City Council will recess into the executive session, close meeting to consult with its attorney regarding pending litigation, City of Mineral Wells versus Hanks, cause number Charlie 48039er on the 29th Judicial District Court. And I need to add items number 10 and 11 on this as well.
I'm just getting out of the way. You're going to have to stop recording. You're going to go into executive session.
Very good. Legal lady, can I ask you something?
No, I'm sorry, I'm headed
Okay.
here. Thank you.
I know. Is this illegal? Oh, he's a finance guy?
No, she's like a student. The city attorney
Lance, if you want.
You don't want me to answer.
Can you do a dance for us too?
Hey, that was the shirts that I got made for. She got made for us. For Father's Day.
Do I need to go through the, obviously there's no action, we'll start back in order on the agenda. Is item number 10, discuss and consider action relating to certificate of occupancy required for residential properties. No, this way is worded. First of all, I'd say this is only wanted to consider the COs for owner-occupied properties.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members, my oration on this is liable to be a little bit lengthy, but since this is our second time around at discussing this.
Hey, real quick, Noel. I'd like to say I talked to council on conflict of interest stuff, and it appears that I don't have a conflict of interest, so I am going to participate in this. All right, go ahead.
You know, since we preliminarily talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I've talked to several people, and I feel like there's several points I want to make. I want to try to dispel some misunderstanding and some misconception. There seems to be some people in the public that believe that if we remove this CO from owner-occupied residential structures, that it basically removes the city from the inspection process. And that's just not the case, because as the city is also the public water supply provider, state law and state regulatory agency rules require that as the public water system operator, we're required to do an inspection on every residential structure, residential or commercial. Every connection that is connected to the city's water system, PCEQ requires that the city do an inspection. They even go to the point to tell us who is a qualified inspector and what the requirements are to be licensed by them as an inspector. And so removing the certificate of occupancy, even from owner-occupied structures, is not going to take the city out of the inspection business. I think the easiest and best way to address many of the concerns of this issue is with an revision in the administrative policy and how our responsibilities as a public water system operator and the city ordinance that we all admittedly even talked about a few weeks ago, that even though it's been in practice for a couple of years or 3 now, it's still relatively new. And I think the problem is where those two mesh. And I believe the solution can be derived with a change in the administrative policy of how we administer our responsibilities in both of those. And so I would ask this council to consider not taking any action or to reject any proposal to remove that. Allow me the opportunity to work with city staff to come up with a new framework that is more customer friendly, more customer informational, that allows us to change the procedure a little bit, bring a new recommendation to y'all for approval that keeps us in compliance in all of the areas that the city is required to be responsible. I just believe that that is the only way that we're really even going to be able to address this problem, because removing the certificate of occupancy from owner-occupied residential structures is not really going to change what happens when you call down here and say, I need my water turned on. Because of state law and Texas Commission on Environmental Quality regulatory rules that are implied on us as a public water system operator.
So Councilman White, are you saying, help me understand, are you saying that prior to this committee meeting in 2013 that we were doing the same inspections for COs on owner occupants because we operate a water district?
I'm not saying they were being done the same because those regulatory rules changed, but yes, we were required. I don't know precisely the time frame that some of these regulatory rules change, because they're changing quite regularly. But the most recent ones are that they now have a license category. They tell you who can be licensed to do the inspection. And it's not only for the benefit of the homeowner, but it's also for the protection of everybody else that's connected to the system and the protection of the public water supply.
I would have, I don't have any problem. The policy's been in place almost 4 years. I see nothing wrong. I think it would be hasty to take action to unwind something so large as this, but I definitely see no problem maybe reconvening the housing committee to visit with the city staff about how is this working 4 years on, and can we make any improvements in the process that benefit the citizens as well as uphold housing standards. And, because there are, some folks have given me ideas, including maybe the city for owner occupied could accept a bank inspection or things like that. But that's just something I feel like needs to be explored as opposed to decided on the spot. But we definitely want to, I feel like we want to be customer service friendly while still, respecting our standards.
I completely agree with you. The feedback I have gotten has been more to not do away with it altogether because of the different reasons that it was instituted in the first place, but it's probably time to give it a performance review, so to speak, and see what's working and what's not, and make some changes if they need to be made.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to have standards, and I think it's a good thing that was put in place in 2014 on owner-occupied and rental properties especially. But I really, in my opinion, it doesn't affect a whole lot of people until they go to sell their house. So if you're living in your house, the city's not going to come knock on your door to do an inspection. If you go to sell your house, then they'll come in, do the inspection, tell you what needs to be updated. At that point, over time, houses in this community will start to get upgraded to where maybe over 20 years, a larger percentage of our houses are up to date as far as safety standards, GFCI plugs, all that kind of stuff. There's a few things on that list that might be able to be tweaked and we look at, and like the other council members said, maybe ways to improve it, but I believe we have to have standards, and I'm glad that committee was put together and put those in place.
I totally agree with Brian. And want to thank you, Doyle, for volunteering for that responsibility. But I think it's a great approach. Thank you.
I see the benefit of what we're doing. We heard our inspector speak a couple weeks ago about over time the improvement, the enhancement of the entire community will take place. So I think we ought to look at it. I think we ought to see if there are some adjustments that can be made. It appears to me it's a good thing.
And what I'm about to say, I guess, might not be popular, but I guess I've never cared too much about that. I feel like if the city could encourage a little bit of, at the turnover of the water bill, could encourage, some appropriate and reasonable individual responsibility, then maybe certain houses wouldn't deteriorate to where it becomes a public problem and we have to tear it down with not individual dollars, but with taxpayer dollars. I think that's definitely something we should consider.
Yeah, absolutely. There's several things on these lists that are just simply making sure that it's already in compliance with the ordinances we have in place. Above and beyond that.
the list that was provided in the packet of the individuals on the housing committee, all of them are still in the community. And, I mean, is it reasonable to just ask them to reconvene and work with our staff? I don't know.
Can I ask a question? I know this was said, but who put this out, Lance? The minimum housing code, City of Mineral Wells, it was done in 2013. Was it before the committee or after the committee?
That was before the committee. That was essentially some information that was put together by city staff to get this issue out in front of the public. My recollection is that was presented to the city council as well as to a group that gathered at the Chamber of Commerce, a group of citizens that came to see what it was that we might be looking at doing and what the overall concept was. So that was just informational on the face of it, and was to get the overall concept out into the public, see what their reaction was, if there was support for this, not support, whatever the case might have been. So those are not necessarily recommendations, as you see. Pretty much.
Yeah, I was going to turn your attention. It says they were trying to address the minimum, the housing, the declining housing with minimum housing standards. But what was presented to the public at that time, it says each city handles the processes differently, and some regulate only rental properties.
That is correct, and I believe that is supported by the information we updated and gave you in your packet this week as well. Yes,
Right.
Some simply do rental properties, that's correct.
Close to the end of it, it says what is recommended for Mineral Wells. This is what was presented to the people. It says establishment of a CO process for all 1 and 2 family residential rental properties. There's no mention of any owner-occupied properties anywhere in here. And in fact, if I look at the cities that are cited in here, the vast majority of them do not imply this same policy upon owner-occupants. And I would go further to say, I like Councilwoman Best's idea of having the committee reconvene, but I would question whether having a committee that is 90% or maybe 100% of landlords being on that committee. I don't think that's a good balance inside of our town. I think if you're going to have a committee, that if we presented this, that this was only going to be for rental properties to the public, and then we set a committee together of only landlords, and the landlords come back and say, well, if it's not fair to only put this on us, it makes sense why this morphed into what was eventually accepted, which was this policy being imposed upon owner occupants. So I would like the idea of doing a committee. I would recommend, if we are not willing to vote and get rid of it, which is what we presented to the people when we first started this, what was presented to the people, not we, the previous council. If we are willing to set up a whole nother task force to come and bring this issue back to us and say, hey, we've looked at the statistical data and it says that this is improving, or this really isn't improving our town based on the past 4 years, and they would maybe perhaps come with a recommendation to continue or discontinue the use of COs on the homeowners, I would be for that, as long as it is a good mix of people on that committee, unlike last time.
How many people were on that committee?
Is it 7 of them?
There were 7.
So with the addition of maybe if you served on that committee and Doyle did also, would that suffice to round it out?
No, I would say that it needs to be an equal number of, if we're keeping the same number, I would do 3 landlords. I'd really like to see 11 people up there, and do 5 landlords and 5 homeowners, and then maybe 1 inspector. Someone that's certified by the state on the inspection, because another issue that I'm concerned with as we look at the residential COs is the legal liability that we have with perhaps code enforcement going out if a homeowner buys a home and forgoes a state inspection, which a state inspection is going to look at everything from, well, if you have your list, it lists foundation, plumbing, electrical, all these issues that are not small items. I would be concerned of the liability to our city inside of our code enforcement going out there and making those assessments.
Isn't that what building inspectors do?
That's what they do, go and inspect them. However, if someone goes up there and says, yeah, your roof is fine, your foundation's fine, your electrical's fine, your plumbing's fine, and you trust that, and there's a problem 15 days later where your house burns down, is our city liable? And this is a question.
State inspections aren't required and a lot of people don't get them.
Correct.
Did you get a state inspection when you bought your home?
I have on several of them, but not on
Did you
some.
get one on your last home?
No.
Again, so a lot of people don't get state inspections, so it leaves us to have one inspector, our city inspector, that does take a look at it.
Right, and if it's a required inspection, I'm just concerned that if it's required and they're inspecting things and there has to be a liability, I would think, to the city. If we're inspecting a foundation saying your foundation's good, the person buys it based upon the inspector saying the foundation's good, does that not?
They're not inspecting it until after it's bought, is that correct?
No,
Or well, now we can inspect it now.
Well, it could be at any time,
Yeah.
but preferably not after.
I think it was a good option that Councilwoman Beth brought up of setting up a committee and letting them bring back a decision to us. I would just suggest that we would perhaps look at having a more equal spread of homeowners and landlords.
I think, I couldn't find the list in my packet, but there were 3 real estate agents on that, so I do think that there was some representation for potential property buyers. I think Carolyn Shipp, Jean Ender, and Charlotte Evans, it did represent potentially the buyers community, so I don't think it's fair to say that buyers were totally unrepresented, but I definitely think that 4 years on, 4 years on, let's look at this and have a split 50-50. I think that is reasonable.
Fair enough to me.
I thought the committee that was put together was a pretty good committee. In fact, being that it was made up of landlords, particularly one that owns, about 300 properties. I mean, for him to put, or for that group to put standards in place that is going to cost them quite a bit of money, I think that it weighs heavier with me than just, a homeowner.
Perhaps I'm looking at this from a different perspective, but could that be that a landlord would want those policies in place to keep smaller individuals that are coming into the landlord position at bay? It almost opens up. Yeah. There are many people that would like to come invest here but would be fearful because of
putting in
codes.
GFCI plugs and making sure that their house is, also if you're buying a house, you can negotiate that with the seller to upgrade that. I mean, I think it comes down to you have a personal vendetta with the issue you had, and that's why you want to get rid of them. I don't think it's a good idea to get rid of it, and I just think you're going to try to get a committee together that you sway in that direction, and I don't think it's good. I don't think it's a good policy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. I think a lot of the people that have been on the homeowner side are looking at the committee that was presented last time and saying that was not inadequate, or that was inadequate in the representation because they weren't represented in that committee.
I've had homeowners call me this week, email me, that aren't rental property owners, saying that these codes need to be in place and that they're glad that we have them. And I'm glad our city has a higher standard than some of these ones that you say, don't have this. But
I've had the same response with the exception of 1 or 2, but 2.
I've had the same response as Brian.
I would like to reiterate kind of my proposal. I would love the opportunity to be able to work with city staff to bring you guys a proposal to see if we can change this, make a few tweaks and changes and help us be in a position to support all of our responsibilities and take care of this and do it with an administrative policy change versus having to completely redo what's in place. I think it's fixable, and I think that's the proper place to fix it. And I would just say, again, so it's out there. I would love to have the opportunity to work with staff, bring you guys a proposal to look at to see if it solves the problem. I have some ideas.
Would you be open to that?
Not really. I mean, if you're just talking about modifying some of the requirements on here, if that modification includes not required, yes.
Okay, so you're, just so that
It
we
does not
understand.
include not required.
if it included going back to prior to 2013, which is when you originally applied, then I would be for that.
So your position is either we have COs for residential properties or not? There is no in-between?
No, no,
You're not
no.
interested in tweaking it to make it work a little better?
Just the homeowners.
Correct.
Because what we presented to the people
For
was
owner
not
occupied, but that's what I'm saying. Well, that wasn't represented to the, it was more, but I feel like that's out of context and from a long time ago. But can we move forward from where we're at now?
Certainly.
So moving forward from where we're at now, if I hear you correctly, there's no middle ground as far as maybe tweaking this and making it more palatable for where we're at. It's, for you, it's a matter of, do we have them at all or not? There's no in between.
I think there's an overreach. I'm compromising by pulling off on the landlords and leaving those in place for really primarily for safety.
So your only acceptable answer is to not have them for owner-occupied properties?
That's what I would prefer, but I think it's a great option to have a good split task force to come and make this decision, because the first task force was all landlords, from what I understand.
And on the, I mean, let's not throw the committee under the bus too hard. That had the minimum housing code as passed, did have the support, and I mean, obviously the city council voted on that. So there were other viewpoints on it other than landlords, and there was I remember, I was not on the committee, but I do recall the proceedings, and it was very, I felt like they were very humane proceedings, and they were very deliberative and thoughtful proceedings. So there were a variety of viewpoints considered, but I certainly think we could revisit it with an open mind.
I'd like to make a motion to accept Dole's proposal of taking this back to the staff to look at, to see if there's anything that could be amended to it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Any abstentions? No abstentions. Motion passes 6-1.
Thank you. I look forward to working with them and bringing you back something.
Discuss items for upcoming agenda. I know that, and this is, say again? Oh, yes, sorry, thank you. On item number 11, consider community electric aggregation proposal or revenue stream.
I make a motion to table that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Now on to item 17, discuss items for upcoming agenda. This is really just a telegraph for future reference and for Peggy to help you out, hopefully. John, is it too quick to have you come back in 2 weeks on just a little bit more information on annexation? Is that too quick? And I know we're under a time crunch, but I don't want to press you.
We'll do our best.
We'll do our best.
Okay. Yeah, and just, it's a roll, and you can just let us know. I would like to, if y'all are okay with it, we can kind of get an update on where we're at on the other task force that we had set up last meeting, kind of get an update on that. And that's something I can provide. I just ask for numbers on how many people have applied for the economic growth. Okay. Any other questions amongst council or any other discussion? All right. Well, this meeting is adjourned.
That item number 10 held in closed session. That answer's not acceptable. Consider to ask for a legal opinion. Which is not very much of an answer.
They didn't say anything about Mercedes, did they? Did they get
That
tabled or
case,
what?
you think that the bill answer, you think
Is that what they were saying?
go into closed session.
Well, they need to grow.
Let the attorney find to table that till further.
It's not designed for everything in closed session. The law is not.
Chocolate and it's just so wonderful. I've even had chocolate.
Some of these folks get in here and say, well, but then when you're out there in the middle of the week and you're talking to them, you can't ever find them. Hiding behind five closed.
Oh, I don't know that.
Dungeons and Dragons trying to get them. Oh, yeah. It's the Battle of the Dragon.
And my friends in California, that's it.